Thank you.
Welcome. I'm Frank Colin. I teach crowdfunding and social media marketing here at the Academy of Art University Motion Picture and TV Division as to undergraduates, as well as social media for entertainment to graduate students. And I'm online with Christina Raia, am I pronouncing it correctly? From Seed&Spark, which is one of the more interesting crowdfunding platforms around because they do a lot of things that the other guys don't. So why don't you give us the short bio, your short bio, explain a little bit about Seed&Spark, and then we'll talk about some more specifics about crowdfunding.
Sure. So hi, my name is Christina Raia. I'm a filmmaker first. I got into crowdfunding because I crowdfunded my own projects. So I was kind of an early adopter of crowdfunding. My first campaign was in 2011. And people had maybe been talking about crowdfunding for only about a year, and no one was really talking about the do's and don'ts just yet. But that was for a short film I was making when I was a student, and then I crowdfunded in 2012 for my first feature. Both of those campaigns were on Kickstarter. And then in 2013, Seed&Spark launched, and I met the CEO and really loved the more audience-focused approach to crowdfunding. So I kind of stayed in touch and became part of that community. And then I ran a campaign on Seed&Spark in 2014 for 2 short films, and then actually crowdfunded for the 4th time 2 months ago for my second feature film. So about a year and a half ago, I started working at Seed&Spark after running my campaign and having a really successful experience because I had been doing these panels about crowdfunding and my experience, and they invited me to come on board as someone who would help other filmmakers. So my job at Seed&Spark is to review campaigns for approval and give feedback, and also teach our crowdfunding to build independence class at schools and festivals across the country. And Seed&Spark is different in a lot of ways. So the most important is that we are film focused, but that's kind of broad. So we have film festivals that crowdfund with us, or film magazines, or any kind of like moving image related project can crowdfund with us. So it doesn't have to be specifically a film, but it does have to be within the realm of film.
Have you done any VR yet?
Sorry?
Have you done any VR or
Yeah,
AR?
we just had I think it was our second VR project just last month, and we're hoping to get more, but we have an entire portal of our platform devoted to VR.
Fantastic, fantastic. In brief, what are the big differences between what Seed&Spark does as opposed to Kickstarter and Indiegogo, other than being for filmmakers?
So, Kickstarter and Indiegogo are largely about raising funds for one project. We are not just trying to help filmmakers make one project. We're trying to solve what is wrong with film right now, with independent film, and that's largely that distribution is broken and that filmmakers have no control over their own work, and there are all these middlemen between the profits that filmmakers can make, so there's nothing to come back to the filmmaker. So that's really what we're trying to do, is build sustainability for independent filmmakers. So we're a crowdfunding platform, but we're also a distribution platform where people can stream the finished projects. So filmmakers can come full circle with their work and distribute to our subscribers, or go wider through us to get to iTunes and Verizon Fios and pretty much every VOD platform that's out there. We have partnerships with them. On the crowdfunding side, though, the biggest difference is what we call our wish list. So we're really about transparency and accountability with your audience. So if you say that this is what you need to make the film and this is the goal you're going for, then they should know exactly where their money is going and how it's being spent, and that they can have a very tangible way of seeing how their money was spent. So we make you break down what your goal is in items, whether that be paying your cast and crew, or the specific equipment that you need, or food, or locations, all of that, basically everything you're doing in pre-production anyway. And we think it's great because it really pushes you as a filmmaker to put together an actual budget and not just pick a number that you like, but be really responsible about how you're spending your money. And then people can do one of two things. They can contribute directly to an item. So if they're friends with one of your cast members, they can choose to contribute $25 to the cast day rates, and that feels more personal to them. Or they can make loans towards the wish list. So if I own the camera that you need and I live near you, I could choose to loan my camera to your campaign, and it would have a value that gets put towards the overall goal. And so a big part of what we're trying to do is also create the opportunity for other filmmakers to support each other without having to dig into our own pockets. So it's very community focused. And I know I personally do loan my gear pretty regularly to my friends' campaigns and other filmmakers here in New York. So that's kind of the most specific difference, is that we're not only cash, we're about loans as well, and that you can do that.
Now,
and then
I'm sorry.
So and then the last thing that I would think is most different is that we are fixed funding. We're against flexible funding, but there is some flexibility in our goal. So we're an 80% to get greenlit platform. You have to get to 80% of your goal in order to receive the funds you've raised, because we believe that any resourceful filmmaker can make the film that they've promised on 80% of the funds, but anything less than that, and you're really sacrificing something you've promised to your audience. And because this is about sustainability, and for you wanting to come back again and again and be able to build trust with people who have contributed and get them to contribute to your next campaign, you want to make sure that you deliver on your promises. So we feel like 80% is a safe percentage. And it also allows filmmakers to kind of build in contingency funds into their goal, because they can say, okay, 80% will make the film, but then I've got this cushion of 20% to be a little bit ambitious. And then our loan feature kind of allows filmmakers to work out deals where it's like, I'll pay you X amount if I can make the goal, but if I can't, then maybe you can loan a percentage of your services to the campaign. So I'm still keeping that transparency and accountability, but there's a little bit of flexibility in terms of how you make that goal.
Do you allow productions to not be fully funded, in the sense that I just want to do the pre-production and shooting and not my post?
Oh, absolutely. So we're the only platform that allows staged funding, where you can launch at any stage, whether that be development or pre-production, production, the second half of production, post-production, festivals, distribution, all of it. And we've seen campaigns do just one. They raise money for development, and then they get an investor and they make the rest of the film, or raise through 4 different stages. And the benefit is that you come back to your existing campaign page, but you keep your followers that you've raised on that page, so that people that have previously contributed get the updates about your new campaign. And so we incentivize you to build followers. So that's a big difference as well. So people can do 2 things on our site in terms of the crowdfunding side. They can contribute any dollar amount or make a loan, or they can just follow the campaign. If they don't have the money right now, or if they aren't quite sure how interested they are in supporting you, they can choose to follow your campaign page and receive your updates. And then we have some kind of benefits about getting followers, because ultimately we're interested in seeing you build an audience for this film. Crowdfunding for us, the funding is sort of secondary to the crowd. The crowd is your audience. Those are the people that are going to watch the film, and that's what you really want out of this. So we try to incentivize you to get followers. So 2 things that we do. If you reach 500 followers, you get automatic distribution in our cinema if you want. It's non-exclusive and it's not mandatory, but it is an option for you if you get 500 followers. You also get our Filmmaker gift box, which has $9,000 worth of value, from festival waivers to hard drives from G-Tech and a bunch of post-production services. You get that if you get 500 followers in a successful campaign. And then you also get what we call our seed fund. So this is kind of where people get a little confused, but the 2 sides of our platform work hand in hand. You can just crowdfund, and that there's no cost for you to do that. We take 5% of what you raise. Or you can distribute with us, and there's no cost for that. We take 10% of your profits, whatever you get money based on minutes watched. But if you are a user who chooses to watch these films that are distributed in our platform, you pay $10 a month. It's like a Netflix subscription, but it's independent film. And $5 of your monthly fee goes towards whatever movies you watch. So you're building sustainability by watching stuff, because the minutes you watch turn into dollars for the filmmakers whose films you're watching. And the other $5 gets put into what we call our seed fund. So currently our seed fund is worth $5,000 based on the subscribers that we have. And if you reach 500 followers in your campaign, if you're crowdfunding with us, and you have a successful campaign, you've gotten the green light, you become eligible for that pool of money. And that pool of money, that $5,000, what it is currently, gets divided based on what our subscribers choose to put their money towards. So I'm a subscriber on Seed&Spark. I pay $10 a month, and every month I get sent a form to look through the campaigns that are currently on the site and choose where I want my $5 every month to go. And so that's a big thing, because we're essentially adding additional money on top of whatever you've raised through your campaign that will hopefully give you the ability to maybe go beyond the stage that you're currently in.
Cool. Now, you have all the basic components that all the crowdfunding sites have: a pitch video, description, team. You break it down a little differently than the other guys do. But as far as the perks or the incentives,
Sure.
If I contribute to any of the incentive in any of the wish list, are all the perks apply?
Yes. So whatever the value is of what you contribute or loan, you become eligible for that level, that incentive level.
I'm going to jump around a little bit because I saw something very interesting last week. A former student of mine's doing the music for a film on Kickstarter, and they have a large niche following. And what they did, which I thought was fantastically clever, was for the first 3 days of the campaign, they offered the digital download at half price.
Yeah.
Have you seen something? Can you do something like that with your platform?
Absolutely. So 90% of campaigns that succeed reach 30% of their goal in the first 3 days.
Yes.
And 30% is kind of the, percentage that makes strangers feel comfortable contributing to a campaign, because it looks like it's going to succeed. It looks like it's going to make the goal that it needs, and people want to be part of that. So we recommend that you get to 30% as soon as possible. In fact, we are the only platform that offers feedback on all your materials and has sort of a personalized touch to every single campaign. And part of that feedback is making sure that you have secured contributions for your first day. And ideally, you've secured 30% of your goal. And something that we often recommend is that you look for ways to drive traffic in those first 3 days. And typically that is like limited time incentives to get people to act now. Because you tell people they have 30 days to do something and they're not going to do it until the last minute.
Right. Now, I noticed on the site it said you have a dedicated specialist for each of the campaigns.
Yes.
And does that go all the way through the campaign, even after the launch?
So no. So we have the highest success rate in the industry of 75% compared to Kickstarter's 37% and Indiegogo's 11%. So part of why that is because I or 2 other people at our company have a hand in every single campaign. And what we do is we look at your pitch video and we give you kind of bullet points, very specific bullet points about how you can make it better. We look at your incentives and say, maybe you should offer this instead, or are you really budgeting for this? This doesn't really apply to your audience. We try and get you thinking realistically. And we also ask for numbers, like how many emails do you have on your email list? Not just like your social media following or how many people you think will give, but realistically, based on the number that you want, what numbers do you have in your email list? And so that's mainly my job. Once you're launched, once we've approved you for launch, we do check in. We all kind of follow how they're doing. We want you to succeed. Ultimately, we want independent film to be successful. We want crowdfunding to be successful because it is a way that keeps the power in your hands. So we do check in, but we're not campaign managers. So we're not going to be holding your hand through the whole process.
That was really the gist of my question. Let's talk about all the work that needs to be done before launch, and including creating online personas for people personally, and people for the film or the project professionally?
So, you know, you shouldn't be on social media just because you want to crowdfund.
Right.
The reality of independent film right now is you need to engage with your audience. The only real proven path to success that we've seen in the past 5 to 10 years of independent film is having a direct connection to your audience and being able to engage them before your project or product exists, and then kind of taking them with you and turning them into amplifiers of your message and your mission, and allowing them to be the people that are spreading the word to get your film seen and the next project made and then the next project seen. And so ultimately, this is all about the long term, and this is all about your voice as a filmmaker. So long before you choose to crowdfund, you should be on social media. If you're not, get on social media. That's sort of the biggest thing. And start thinking about your brand. So for me personally, I do have social media handles for my projects, specifically my production company, because I roll out a lot of short films, and so it doesn't make sense for me to be managing 10 different handles per project, but rather the brand that is the company. But I also understand that I am the brand, my voice as a filmmaker, what I have to say. People follow me. I've managed to crowdfund 4 times, increasing my goal with each one, and building upon that audience with each one, because I've embraced the fact that people are following me and my voice, not just the projects that I've made. So what you want to do is sort of find your voice and then engage with people. So I think the biggest misconception about social media is that you should just be sharing, and asking. But what you really want to be doing is sort of engaging with people based around who you're trying to reach. So I do a lot of LGBT content, for instance. So my kind of Twitter presence or even my Instagram presence, or I have sort of the same voice, but a different way of using each platform. But generally across each platform, I'm sharing, news related to LGBT rights, and I'm sharing other content that's similar in tone or in genre to my work. And I'm looking for other filmmakers who do similar work, and I check out their work, and I tweet at them and say, I really loved your project, blah, 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 blah. Or I look for people talking about how they're craving, LGBT content, and I engage in conversations with them. And I try to be as sincere as possible, but I'm also being strategic. I'm building relationships with people who I then can reach out to when I'm crowdfunding or when I'm releasing something and say, we talked about this. Here's how my project relates to what we talked about and what you're interested in. Here's why you specifically should want to be part of this. Because it's all about personalization and crowdfunding.
So we'll talk about social media and which platforms in a moment, but every creative, whether they're a filmmaker or an illustrator or an artist of some kind, should have a website of some kind, even if it's some free thing on Wix or about.me, something that you can point people to prove your authenticity and show that you are more than just somebody on social media sharing stuff.
Absolutely.
And how do you get somebody, and I'm speaking specifically of students, who haven't done that yet, to get off their butts and either, spend, if they can afford it, spend a little money on a domain and registering the domains, or at least getting something out there that they can brand as their own? What would you say, speaking to that?
Well, I mean, there is no if you build it, they will come in any of this right now. And so you have to take the initiative. And the fact of the matter is, if I want to get my project funded and I need to be reaching out to people, I have to know that there are so many other people reaching out to the same person that may be working in the same genre as me or have a similar, tone, if not story, to their work, and they're reaching out to them maybe at the exact same time as me. And so I need to think, well, how can I make myself stand out? How can I prove that I'm serious about this and that I'm worth investing in? And that's your reason right there, to be as legitimate seeming as possible, and that means branding yourself. Getting a website, you don't have to pay for it. You can do a .me or, you know, a Wix page that has Wix in it until you can afford to pay for it to be out of it. But just create visuals that show, okay, I've put in the time, I've put in the work, and I'm serious. And you know, start adding to your portfolio as you can.
I don't think people care anymore that if you're a young, aspiring filmmaker or creative, they don't care if it's Wix or About Me, whatever. It's something that is so genuine and yours, and you've made it that way. That's the important thing. It doesn't matter if it's the domain. I mean, obviously, you'd like a domain that's yours that you're going to carry on through your career, but if you can't get that, you just got to run with it. You got to put that flag down and say, this is who I am.
I absolutely agree. Honestly, yeah. And so it's really just, I like to think that it's about a culture of plenty and that there is room for all of us, you know, creatives in general, that we don't have to compete with each other. I truly believe that. But there are so many of us. It's a big pool, and you want to stand out. And sometimes it is a matter of one person has $25 right now to give, and you want them to choose you in your project. And so you want to make sure that you can compete on the level that everyone else is working on as much as possible. And just make it feel as authentic to you as possible. Show off your style, show off your aesthetic. If you're an artist, make that presence online be an example of you and your art.
How would you tell people, what would you suggest to people to start building that list of influencers, whether these people would be mentors or people or professionals that they admire? It's a long haul. Sometimes you have to spend 6 months commenting on somebody's blog, retweeting their tweets, and you know, maybe eventually somebody comes back, or maybe they never do. But when you've engaged somebody more than a few times and there is a little back and forth, how do you ask for that email?
So, yeah, I mean, it should really start with a level of, you want to do your research. It starts there. I will say, for instance, my first feature is a horror film. It's kind of like a feminist horror film, but fundamentally it's a genre film. And I had been in a horror film class in school. So I reached out to all of the students in that class and asked if I could interview them before my campaign. And I asked them where they got their news about upcoming horror films and indie horror films specifically. And through them, I found, 30 or 40 different blogs and websites I had never heard of. But I didn't just reach out, I didn't just send a mass email to all of these sites. What I did was I researched each site individually and what kind of content they shared and what their readers were engaging with and why their readers were specifically engaging with that site in particular. And I asked the people that I had interviewed, knowing unique things about them, like, their age and their sexual orientation and their race and their gender, all of these things. And I was like, okay, why do you like this site specifically? And I found out things about each site's readers. And then I started engaging with those websites in a way that was specific to them and their audience. And yes, it took a very long time, but by the time
what is that very long time?
So
6 months, 9 months, a year?
In my case, it took about 6 months. I started this process. But because it was so specific, I think I was able to accelerate it because my film, I will say that in crowdfunding, you have a little bit of an advantage in doing a genre film because there are so many fan sites and blogs devoted to genre film, horror films and thrillers and sci-fi, that people want to hear about it and people want to share much more than I think like an intimate drama. And so that's I had that advantage there, that I was able to engage very easily with people because fans of genre film are big fans. So in any case, it took about 6 months to sort of create authentic relationships with all these people that were genuinely based on my interests, but how my interests paired with theirs. And when I launched my campaign, I got a ton of press and unique press. It wasn't all the same. It was like focusing on different aspects of my film. And I don't believe that it was pandering. I didn't change anything about my pitch to any of them that was incorrect about my film. I wasn't lying about my film. I was just highlighting an aspect that would most appeal to them and their readers. And that was, extremely effective. And so it really is about doing your homework, doing the outreach, and then trying to be as personalized as possible. If you're going to reach out to bloggers, don't just say, hi, so-and-so, or to whom it may concern. Look up the person, read some of their articles, try and reach out in a way that shows you know who you're talking to and you know why their project would interest them.
We'll go back to press in a second, but how did you get those emails? What did you, I mean, in Kickstarter and Indiegogo, one tactic or strategy is always to say, hey, after you've engaged somebody for a while and they know you and they know you're going to be a filmmaker, or a creative, you're going to do a crowdfunding project, you put it up on a platform and you have your preview and you say, what do you think of it? Can you make some suggestions? I'd love your advice, and look for feedback from them. But we still kind of, even though you're reaching out through social media, and you can use social media to do that, it'd probably be better if you had an email, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so we see about 20 to 30% conversion rate from email to contribution, whereas social media has a 1% conversion rate. So social media is really great for building hype and kind of engaging people or enticing them inward, but what makes them really contribute is that personalized, direct outreach. And so I believe that social media should be a means to getting an email address. And that's basically how I did it. So I would reach out. Sometimes websites or people in general make that stuff public. If you go to an influencer's website, maybe they have their email address listed. Often they don't. I don't have mine listed. But people can contact me through a contact form on my website. So that's a way to kind of get a correspondence going that goes directly to their inbox. In other cases, you're sort of playing a long game, starting a social media engagement with someone, creating a friendship, and then at some point asking for their email. And that's how I did it, and that's how I often do it. I just do a direct ask. And also, going out into the world and meeting people and trying to be not just like asking for business cards like crazy, but going out and creating authentic relationships to the point where they offer you their business card is very important, because now you have that email. I have boxes of business cards, and
Yes.
those people now are in a spreadsheet of emails that I have.
Excellent, excellent. Back to press for a moment. Did you create a press release, and how did you deploy that?
I did initially, but I found, and we at Seed&Spark have seen, that they're really not as effective as they used to be. People now, press often now, they get so many press releases, they get so many requests for especially crowdfunding campaigns. What we recommend is you treat it like you're speaking to a person. And as I said, be as personalized as possible. So you shouldn't have a blanket like pitch for your project. You should, that is sort of your general marketing materials, but you should have audience specific ways of speaking about your film. And as I said, if you're reaching out to someone or a website, you should have read many more of their pieces and say, oh, you wrote a piece about blah, 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 blah. And I thought it was really great, and here's why I think, my project may interest you too. But the more that you can show or even fake that you know who you're speaking to, the better. The more likely they'll pay attention, and they won't just, delete it like every other press release that they get, because they get many, especially for crowdfunding.
Do you help people create an editorial calendar of outreach like 30, 60 days out before launch? Is that something?
We have a ton of resources on our website that people can download that are kind of examples of things. I personally don't engage with your materials, but if I'm helping you launch a campaign and you wanted to send me a sample to look over, I would. But generally, if you're running a very large campaign, or if you're planning to engage with a lot of press, like if you think you have a project that's going to go very wide, we recommend you have a campaign manager or a marketing manager, someone along those lines who would be more equipped to be more hands-on in that way. My job largely is more about your pitch video and looking over your incentives and your wish list. And then just kind of making sure you're being realistic about your goal.
It's difficult to get people to understand, or I've found with the students, it's difficult, even with my clients, it's difficult to get them to understand how much friggin' work it is
Yeah.
to do a crowdfunding campaign. I mean, it's 24/7 for 90 days, 60 days before, 30 days during, and you're insane if you think you can do it yourself.
Absolutely.
And even with the tools that'll let you automate your tweets and automate your posts, and we all know there's gazillions of tools now to make that happen for you, so you can sort of spin that off. But what if you don't have, what would you say to somebody who's saying, oh, I don't need any help, or I don't want a campaign manager, or I don't know anybody?
Well, so, for some people, if they're not willing, maybe they need to fail and then realize that they need those things. I don't think everyone needs a campaign manager, and I wouldn't recommend getting a campaign manager if your goal is below $10,000 or even at $10,000. But film, so it's different with other creative arts, but film in particular is collaborative. Yes. And so crowdfunding for film should be collaborative. For me, it's like, okay, a crowdfunding campaign, 30 days or however many days you run it, it's 24/7. And I have a job, I have, maybe I have school, I have a life, I have friends, I have a family. These are things that you want to make time for. So you need to have a team of people who can fill in when you're not there. And ultimately, you want to have people on your team that have different schedules than you, so that, if you work a 9 to 5, someone who doesn't work a 9 to 5 can be manning those hours, but also different skill sets. So I am, often the face of my own projects. I do a lot of the outreach myself, but I'm not doing the graphics for my pitch video because I'm not technically skilled like that. I have someone else doing that, or, I'm not mixing the audio, I'm not composing, I'm not doing a lot of things that are involved in the crowdfunding process. I have my role in it. And so I will say, film specifically, anyone above the line, anyone that's getting a producer credit, in the current state of film, they need to accept that direct outreach is part of producing, and that getting an audience for the film benefits everyone. And so if the goal is to have an audience, then everyone who is getting a producing credit should be part of doing that outreach and building that audience and creating an audience for the film as a whole. So those producers, though, don't necessarily need to be producers. They can be your best friends. They can be your family members. They can be anyone that's willing to help out and be part of this thing. Because, as I said, crowdfunding is not just about the money, it's about the crowd. And so, if my best friend, I could ask my best friend for $25, or I could ask my best friend to be part of making this thing with me and participate in actually creating it. And that could be, helping organize our email spreadsheet and, doing some graphics for a poster, or allowing me to test some stuff on them. Whatever it may be, your crowd can participate in crowdfunding, even if they're not, actually part of the creation of the work, whether it be a film or a painting or, music, anything like that.
Let's talk about testing again. Let's go back to that for a second. In that, you have to test your messages. You have to test what you're saying to slightly different audiences. You have to kind of see how people respond. You have to do surveys. What about live events with people prior to launch and after? What do you feel about that?
So there are a few things, like, we talked about press just a minute ago, and press is great, but we don't see a very high conversion rate from press to contributions. What press is great at is legitimizing the campaign in the eyes of people who have already contributed or who are interested in contributing. And events are similar in that way. We don't see a very high conversion rate from events to contributions. What we see is more engagement from the people who were already interested in the project, and getting them to be more interested in spreading the word. And that's what we think events are really great for. So I, try to put together like a kickoff event for every campaign, or a closing out event. I think that closing out events tend to create more contributions because there's that urgency of like, we need to get there and we need to get there tonight. But kicking off events are really great at making people feel included, because you're not asking for a handout in crowdfunding. You're asking people to join you and be part of something. And the more you can make them actually feel part of something, the better. So the more in person you can be in your celebration and in your networking, the better.
Yeah, no begging, no begging, no pleading, no begging,
yeah,
no
no
pleading.
begging.
Even if it's like your life's on the line, and no pleading, no begging.
Right. The tone that you want to set is, this is exciting. This is something that no one else can be part of. It's exclusive if you make this contribution. You're paying for a product and an experience. You're not giving me a donation. And that's the tone that you should be setting, because this is not just about this project. It's about your career and the tone that you set as an artist, and that your art is worth something. And that's really how you should be approaching it. As far as other events, though, I will say, so I crowdfunded in 2014 for 2 short films that had LGBTQ characters. So we crowdfunded in June during Pride. And we went to Pride. We were planning to go anyway, but we had shirts that had, our URL for our campaign on it, and we were kind of handing out cards, and generally people were celebrating, so we didn't expect people to stop, celebrating and contribute to our campaign. But we were using hashtag NYC Pride on Twitter and kind of live streaming and taking photos from Pride and linking to our campaign. So we used something that was already trending, and people were clicking through because of this trending hashtag. And we got a lot of traffic based on that. And that is something that you can do if you know that there are events going on that relate to the themes of your project. You want to be really smart about when you schedule your campaign, if there's anything relevant. Another example is, we had this web series that was about comic book villains. It was sort of like the version of the villain story. And they were crowdfunding during Comic-Con. And so they went to Comic-Con and they were using that hashtag and they were engaging with people. And you may not see contributions out of it. We did see a few, but what it did more was show how serious we were and kind of added something else to update about that wasn't just, look at the campaign, look at the campaign, look at the campaign. But it was like, look, we're doing something else that's not really relevant, but is ultimately relevant.
So scheduling that, if the event is a Thursday through Sunday event, when would you launch prior to that? Would it be a week and a half, 2 weeks prior? You wouldn't want to launch during the event, or would you?
No, so you're gonna, in any campaign, you hit a middle wall where you just don't move, and people.
The plateau.
Right, exactly, and you have sort of exhausted the social media shares you can have of just asking people to check out the campaign. Most people have probably already checked out the campaign. So what you want to do is find new ways of reaching people and also giving people a reason to check out the campaign. And so that the middle, I think, is always the best when you're not moving and you need to move. Anything new you can add in that middle, the better.
And what about live events online, like Facebook Live or something else?
I used a lot of Facebook Live for my last campaign because it's, everyone's into it right now, so it was very timely for me. Again, it's about knowing your audience, so you want to do the research and know, okay, when are they on Facebook? And also what social media platforms your audience uses, because for some people it's like, younger people we see often are not on Facebook at all anymore. So it's like, my audience isn't on Facebook. Why am I going live on Facebook? I should be on Snapchat, or I should be on Instagram. I shouldn't bother with Facebook or Twitter. Whereas, I personally have a lot of extended family on Facebook, a lot of people that are always interested in seeing what I'm up to. And so I had a lot of success with Facebook, even though I personally am much more of an Instagram user. So it's really about knowing your audience and where they are, because you're not going to reach them if you're not where they are.
What about a Facebook professional page, regardless of how you feel about Facebook? Does that make sense for a project?
I think it's a good idea to have, because you never know who's going to come across the page and take an interest that is outside of your network but part of your target audience. However, Facebook kind of sucks in terms of their algorithm. Facebook pages, you have to pay to boost everything. Otherwise, 10% of your audience is seeing what you share. So I wouldn't bank on it as a marketing tool. I would consider it a kind of accessory for people to further follow along with what you're doing. But if you do it, make sure that everything you upload is native to it. So you upload your pitch video directly and your photos rather than just text, because outside links just do not get any traction on Facebook.
Right. And, Facebook, the one interesting thing about Facebook, especially for a genre film, is all the Facebook groups.
Right.
And engaging them prior to launch, depending on the genre, might be a good strategy.
Absolutely. That's something I definitely used for all of my campaigns. I'm part of many different Facebook groups based on the genre I'm currently working with. A big part of my work in general, I do a lot of ensemble pieces, and inclusion and representation is always a factor regardless of genre. But I tend to do like comedy, and then I do horror, and so sometimes I'm targeting different parts of my audience. And so I do engage in different groups in different ways, and I have had a bit of success sharing in Facebook groups because these are people that have seen me before and are paying attention, and often will get notified when someone part of the group shares something. So it's much more likely to get seen than you just made a status.
Okay. Back to the platform for a minute. Can an independent filmmaker distribute without crowdfunding on
yes.
the site?
So it's a little bit harder because we need you to prove that there's an audience for the film. With crowdfunding, that proves it. You've had a successful campaign and you've reached 500 followers. That shows that there are people anticipating this film. If you are interested in distributing with us and not crowdfunding, we would then try and look at your general metrics that you have across social media. And if the film did a festival run, like how many emails did you collect out of that? All of that stuff. It's a little bit more invasive than just our general system. But we're definitely open to it. My advice, though, always is to run a campaign. If you're planning to distribute with us, run a campaign for $500 and build some hype for that distribution release. So run a campaign for the materials you need for distribution, and you'll find that you just quadrupled your audience because you ran a crowdfunding campaign. That's the biggest way to build buzz and to get people interested in what you're making, is to make them feel part of it at any stage.
Okay, one more question before we see if anybody else has something they want to ask. Who was the biggest influencer you went after that you didn't know, that you can say, oh, I was really happy when I finally got so-and-so retweeted my tweet and we've now got a further relationship, and how did that work? I mean, did you look at, I'm just going to say like a Steven Spielberg out there or somebody like that, or somebody in horror? Did you go after some big Hollywood persona or not? I'm just curious.
I did try tweeting at some celebrities, but I will say that without having built an actual relationship with them, they're not going to, because they get so many requests for retweets, they're not going to just tweet about something. And so I would sometimes get a reply, but it was like, good luck. Or, if I had engaged with people and told them that I liked their work a while ago, and then we had a bit of a Twitter relationship, and then I followed up about my campaign. Generally, it's very hard with, I think, celebrities because they get so many requests for shares. And also, I should say that, honestly, we have seen campaigns get celebrities to retweet them, and all it does is get a bunch of likes, because 1% conversion rate from social media.
Right.
And the less personalized, the less effective it will be. And if I'm getting, some other horror director to retweet my campaign, I may get people liking the fact that he did that, but ultimately they're fans of his, and they're not being given a personalized reason for why they would want to support my film, this person they've never heard of. So I don't think that it's all about influencers. It's about engaging your audience in a unique and individualized way. That said, I had success creating relationships with writers like at IndieWire. We got featured on IndieWire on the homepage for my comedy web series that came through a Twitter, sort of 2-month-long Twitter conversation with one of their main writers, and that was like, I was genuinely interested in what she wrote a lot of, and so I was kind of having this conversation. And then when I released my web series, which had been crowdfunded, but I released my web series, it got shared on the homepage, and we ended up getting 20,000 hits in like 2 hours. So that, and now my web series has 500,000 views, largely because that IndieWire piece turned into a BuzzFeed piece that sort of had a domino effect of press. Cool. So that's sort of my biggest, I guess, success story in terms of reaching out to someone on Twitter, creating a conversation and a relationship that then dominoed into something bigger.
But notice she said it was a 2-month cycle before it succeeded.
Yeah.
Who's got a question?
I was interested about something that you said that I feel there's not much information about that, and it's the contingency funds. Funds, yeah. So how important is that? Because usually you don't. Well, at least me, since I started this class, I didn't hear about that much until you mention it now. So when you start a project, you don't think about that. You just like think, how much money do I need, and not about having extra.
So we generally, in film anyway, recommend 10% of your budget, because just statistically speaking, whatever can go wrong will go wrong in film, but also maybe in life and any artistic endeavor. And you want to have emergency funds, and we say that you should have 10%. That's not always realistic based on your budget, but as I said, on our platform, because we are 80% to get your money, we kind of build that in where you have the ability to be ambitious and go for this backup money, but know that you can make what you've promised without it. You just may not have emergency money.
You were saying that we should engage, but also during the talk you said you talk about incentives. So what do you mean? Like what kind of incentives? It's like a marketing strategy. So
on our site, across crowdfunding, it's generally customary to offer some sort of item in exchange for a value that you've contributed. A lot of a perk, but a lot of platforms encourage things like physical items that are like swag, like a T-shirt or a poster or a mug. I and Seed&Spark in general, we're generally against that kind of stuff, because why spend more money when you're trying to raise money? And that's the biggest mistake filmmakers make, is not delivering on the physical items that they've promised because they didn't budget for them. So what we recommend you do is you poll your audience. You have this group of people now. You've collected a bunch of email addresses. You've been doing message testing. You say, what would interest you as an incentive? What about my film interests you? Are you the type of person who wears fan T-shirts? Are you the type of person who puts posters on their wall? I personally do not put posters on my wall, so if you offered me a poster of your film, that would be useless. So poll your audience, figure out what they're genuinely interested in, and then offer things that we recommend build the world that your product exists in. So speaking, film is what I do and what I work in, but there are other ways you could spin this for what you do for illustration or whatever it may be. But for instance, because film is such a collaborative experience and you're offering people the experience of making that thing, higher level incentives tend to be like walk-on roles on set or visits to set. People who don't make film think filmmaking is really exciting and interesting. It's really a lot of sitting around and watching the same thing over and over again. But for non-filmmakers, that's exciting. So, offer them the opportunity to come visit set, have a meal with the cast and crew, name a character, get to read the script before anyone else. The most common is often you want to thank people on social media because you want to show gratitude and you want to make people feel appreciated because they did do something that matters. And the more personalized you can be with that, the better. We've seen people do like poems, like a thank you poem for each individual person, like a haiku, and then also a copy of whatever they're funding. So whether that be a private link or a digital download, or if you find your audience is more old school than DVDs, but you want to make sure you budget for that to create and ship the DVDs. But ultimately, they're paying for this product, so they should get it at some level. That's usually around $25, sometimes more. And yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff we've seen people do that don't cost any money but make people feel part of something. Often it's exclusive content, anything that is like no one else gets to see this, like behind the scenes videos and photos, or getting to interview someone who's part of it if you have high profile people part of your project. But that's generally what we think of as incentives. You're incentivizing people to not just contribute, but contribute at a higher and higher level based on their income level or interest level.
We were talking about no begging.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I were talking previously about the difference between stalking somebody, being in that middle ground, and then begging. And you have to be in that middle ground, but do you do it through testing? How do you find that middle ground that'll work for your audience and the people you're reaching out to? How do you discover that, other than through testing, or?
Yeah, through testing, and maybe also through trial and error. You should definitely do as much testing as you can, but you won't know in the real world how it will work on certain people until you give it a shot. But I will say that it's all about the tone that you go into it with. So again, thinking about it not as a handout, but you're genuinely offering someone something. So try and think of outreach and kind of persistent research of someone and then eventual outreach to someone as offering. What can you offer them? I'm not asking them for a favor. I'm not asking them to give me money or do something. I'm offering them the opportunity to further advance something they're already doing or a mission that they have. So if, for instance, just an example from our site, we had a project called the Video Blogs that was about a woman who was struggling with depression, and she would record videos on her laptop as sort of therapy. And the director reached out to a ton of mental health organizations and influencers, largely through social media, but he didn't do it by saying, help me because I need help or whatever, or, my film matters, because he was saying, okay, look, here's the mission of my project. Here's how that mission aligns with your mission. Here's how my project will help further advance your cause and your message and further reach your intended audience and people that you want to help. And so through that messaging of offering and saying, here's why you should want to partner with me, not why I want to partner with you, but why you should want to partner with me, he was able to get tons of organizations to spread the word about his campaign. And then also when the film was finished, they did a tour of the film where the film would screen and then the organizations would do a talk back afterwards. And it was a mutually beneficial relationship. And so I think that that's really what you want to be going in with the mindset of, this is going to be a mutually beneficial relationship, and here's how our interests align. You want to go into it thinking from their point of view, not yours.
Can that be built before launch through engaging people through the previews? And
absolutely. The more in advance you can be, the better, because a lot of, especially if it's an organization or any kind of high profile thing that requires approval of messaging, you want to make sure that you've gotten the approval to, use their Twitter handle or give them materials to put out on their newsletter or whatever it may be. The more in advance, the better. So if you have your pitch video ready, or if you have your general messaging ready, do it months in advance so that that's already taken care of. The worst thing during your campaign would be to be researching ways to reach people rather than running your campaign. You want to be responding during your campaign, not looking for new avenues. Though those will always come up because people may come to you and say, hey, you should check out this organization you've never heard of. But still, you want to do your homework and make sure that you've built these relationships long in advance.
Anything else you want to say to wrap things up? We're almost at an hour. Anything we didn't go over you feel is important to talk about?
No, I just think we create art in general, not just film, anything, because we want an audience for it. And you can't control a lot these days. You can't, promise anyone that anything's going to profit. You can't promise that you're going to win any awards or get into any festivals or whatever it may be. What you can promise is that you can have an audience, that you can reach people because that's in your hands, and social media allows that, and getting out and meeting people allows that. And so I just recommend that you really put in the effort to put yourself out there and put your work out there. So get a website together, get on social media, start engaging with people and really building an audience, because you're trying to say something, right? I mean, you're making art because you want to say something, and so make sure that it's heard and seen.